Steve, welcome to Future Speak.
That moment of forced adaptability, I think, stuck with me many times. And I've drawn that through the rest of my life, really wanting to understand my environments really well and understand what's going on and why things happen the way that they do.
Steve, welcome to Future Speak. I was generally really excited to have you on the show. As you know, I send your book to all of my clients. I quote you frequently. You're my real go-to person, actually, when I talk about the future of work. And I know it's something that's close to your heart. You've obviously written lots about it in your book. But without my continuing to spout, I'd love you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Great. Well, first, thank you for having me, Sam. And I'm very humbled to be referenced by you like that, because I have a lot of respect for the work that you're doing and the reach that you have. Okay, so just a little bit about my background. I'm going to go back a ways because I think it informs how I see the world. I was born an American but raised a South African. Before I could walk, my parents moved us to South Africa, and for the first 5 years that I can remember, I was in South Africa. When I was about 7, the government asked my family to leave, and so we were kicked out, like a lot of Americans at the time. And my younger brother and sister were both born there, and we settled in the US. And that process was really hard for me because I was teased for my accent, which I remember crying, not wanting to go to school. Please, mommy. And I had to stay up late at night with my older sister practicing American and trying to speak a language. And, you know, when we're young, we want to fit in. We really do. And that moment of forced adaptability, I think, stuck with me many times. And I've drawn that through the rest of my life, really wanting to understand my environments really well and understand what's going on and why things happen the way that they do. Finished up school, moved to California from the East Coast in the US, where I spent most of my childhood after Africa. And I stumbled into human resources in my first job. And I got lucky. I loved it. Everything about sports that I love. How people handle different competitive situations, winning, losing, when they're behind, how they perform with a team, what kind of leaders inspire the best work, or who doesn't want to lead, or who wants to work alone. Understanding those dynamics in sports really translated well into the working world and served me well. And so, you know, around the age of 22, 23, I boom, I think I found something I want to do more of. And over the next 15 years, I moved into about 5 different industries, fashion, insurance, and then semiconductor, and then internet networking hardware, which was Cisco Systems, and really got a chance to try and test my interests. And human resources, as you know, and as a lot of listeners know, it is an incredibly broad field. Everything from, you know, sourcing and recruiting to onboarding to coaching to training and development to immigration, compensation, relocation. Now we've got data analytics, lots of work on culture. And so once I figured probably in my mid-30s, I want to do this for the rest of my life and I want to be really good. I went and got a master's degree at the University of San Francisco. And I doubled down and said, I want to not be just good at that. I want to be great at this. And I love it. And for the first time in my life, getting a master's degree, I was going to school with a reason. I think the rest of my life I went to school because that's what you did. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have had a grandmother and a family that could help support me mostly. I had to work a lot to pay my way through school, but that was a great experience going back and saying, I know why I'm here and I'm hungry, and met some great friends and some colleagues to this day I collaborate with. And so after that, the dot-com bubble burst. I was in high tech in 2001, and then the roof fell in, and the work I was doing in mergers and acquisitions for this company, Cisco, ended. So they asked me if I wanted to go overseas, and I took an opportunity to go to Singapore and work in Asia as the head of HR for a huge region of 3,000 employees. And that was wonderful. And I loved it. And it was such a high learning curve, incredibly stressful because I didn't speak any foreign language. I speak a little French and some English, and I speak body language. And
yeah.
what was really scary, Sam, going to Asia was that skill of reading people's facial expressions and mannerisms had absolutely no value in Asia. And so that was a big part of my upbringing in a family where my parents didn't speak a lot. So you kind of had to read like what was going on and what are people really communicating? And so I had to learn something new, which was appreciative inquiry, asking a lot more questions and seeking a lot more feedback. And that was a great experience. 2 years there. And then my headquarters asked me to come back to expensive land. I mean, California.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go. And my first son was born, so decided to pursue an opportunity that came my way in Canada. And so I took a job in Western Canada, British Columbia, which is probably the place where I felt most at home, interestingly enough, in my life.
Wow.
So I took my first head of HR job. I swore earlier in my career I'd never be a head of HR because I hadn't met anyone doing that I had a lot of respect for, or who had a lifestyle that I wanted. And I was very afraid of that role, And so I reluctantly took my first head of HR job with the assurance of the CEO and his executive team that, hey, we'll help you ramp up and we'll cover the things that you don't know and don't worry about it. And they did. And those were probably in retrospect, four of the most satisfying career years of my life. For a company no one ever heard of, PMC Sierra, and it's since been acquired by another company, Microsemi. But that was an incredible run. After 4 years of being in Canada, I was recruited to go back to the US by a video game company. Once I was back in the US, my job was essentially reduced to very, very, you know this from reading my book, it wasn't that interesting because in 2008, the second mortgage crisis came, and the cash that the video game company Electronic Arts had to buy other companies really became very precious, and we couldn't acquire. And I joined the company to help them go on a very big acquiring binge, and that plan stopped. So that's when LinkedIn came knocking at the door, and this is 2009. And I'd never worked for a small pre-IPO startup, but that's your dream in Silicon Valley, to have a chance to build something.
Yeah.
That was the big draw for me. So I went on a speed dating interview. In like 2 days, I met like 15 of the executives, board members, and founders. And I was so excited about that job, I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks.
I love that.
I hope that I was like, please, I hope I get this, because I'd never been presented with something that allows you to practice your craft and be a product consultant and help sell, because they're selling to your peers, other CHROs around the world. And so it was like nirvana. But it was incredibly hard because we were trying to recruit and set up a company in the shadows of the sexy brands like Apple, Google, Twitter, Facebook, and they could outpay me, outbenefit me, outwork environment me when work environments were a thing. And that was hard, but we won in the end. And I learned a lot. And those lessons of facing what feels like an insurmountable reality of trying to grow a company in a sea of what I call Silicon Valley as a career candy store served me really well to learn how to be creative and resourceful and innovative in building a company when it's really, really hard to do that. And so I did that for 4 years, which felt like 20. We grew the company from about 400 to almost 5,000 by the time I left, and from 2 countries to 17, and from 2 offices to 26. And I'm very, very proud of the culture, and very proud of being recognized by many, Wall Street Journal, Fortune magazine, for building a world-class culture to this day. And so what I've done since then is become a better father and been more involved in the community here, coaching my kids and so forth, but also building a business to help leaders and organizations around the world be more creative with their talent strategies. And that culminated last year in producing a book, which I'm excited about, Workquake. And it couldn't have come out at a better time when the whole world is facing this crisis, right? So that's, I can shorten it down, but I think it serves a good foundation it's a bit of a journey, but I think the journey really helps explain why I do what I do today.
I absolutely agree with you. And the fact that you were the forefront of something that's so cutting edge today, when you look at what LinkedIn has done for community, forget business owners and being able to build pipelines, the community aspect of the product itself has fundamentally built businesses around the globe over the last 2 years. There is absolutely no doubt about that.
And that was really an unexpected. I mean, in retrospect, it seems like, wow, you had all these really interesting features of that experience, but I was really just focused on building the company. I wasn't thinking about the value, the consumer value, or the impact to the world of work itself.
Exactly.
To the extent that it's become. I mean, I'm obviously a part of how the company evolved, but I use it every day. It's probably the site that I spend the most time on. And I'm not looking for a job. I'm networking, I'm reading, I'm sourcing, I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm meeting people like you. And it's incredibly helpful in that respect, but I didn't appreciate it at the time, how amazing it was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? When I look back at, say, my days at Sky, I remember working for the guy I worked for at the time, who was the CEO there, and we had no idea 20 plus years later, when we look at the sports rights, the boxing rights, everything that was created, the empire it's in, I didn't create like you did, way different. However, being part of that, you're so right, you take that with you. So sharing your story really helps give the context for what we're here to go on to discuss, which is, what is the future of work? What does the future of work mean to you, Steve?
Well, I tell you, I've really dedicated probably the last 10 years of my life, probably my whole working career, to thinking about this, thinking about work, thinking about careers, jobs, the relationship between employer and employees. And I have to say, after really immersing myself in this deeply the last 10 years, that the future of work, I'm first going to say something a little cheeky. It's the worst marketing campaign in history. We have scared the heck out of the workforce. Robots are coming, AI, automation. It's going to take your job. Half the skills in 10 years don't even, half the jobs, half the skills you need don't even exist yet. Good luck figuring out what that is. Digital transformation's coming. Good luck. I hope your job exists after we digitally transform. And we talk more about technology than we do the richness of the human experience. That I think that's the reason technology is here, is to create a more beautiful experience of life. But that's not how we present it. We present it, and even just the words digital transformation, I think, are very gloom and doom and scary. It's when you hear those words, you don't think of a sunset, a teddy bear, a puppy. You think of cold, robotic, impersonal, and that's the language that we're using. So when I think about the future of work on a more serious tone, I think I'm increasingly convinced that the future of work really is the future of learning. The pandemic has served to make it really clear the future is less certain than it's ever been. It's very unpredictable. The inventory of qualified talent is diminished, and it's going to continue to diminish as people change roles, change industries, pivot. And we're only at the beginning of that. This is what I really strongly. I don't think this is, a moment in time after the pandemic, things are going to revert. They're not. And I'm excited about that for my kids. But as a business owner, I would be terrified right now, because everyone in my portfolio is looking at their life differently. And so I think it's on the really optimistic side, it's a moment in time that we have right now to create a better future of work. And everyone is ready for something different. We're ready for change on a scale we've never felt before. And it's a great time. I mean, when you stop doing things you used to do, the chances of you reverting back to that are less. And that's what we're in right now. And I think we've exposed that the water cooler, the being in the office, has a lot of flaws. It has a lot of merits too, but it's not perfect for everyone all the time. And I think at a minimum, that's one thing that we're recognizing right now. So, when I think of the future, it's a challenge of creativity. So I'll give you an example. Most clients that I go visit right now, when I ask them what their biggest challenge is, they say without a hesitation, it's I can't find the people I need fast enough, and they don't stay when I do. And then I say, do you see that changing in the next 5 to 10 years? And that's when they pause and go, no. I said, okay. So the challenge isn't recruiting. The challenge is building a talent strategy that allows you to thrive with a more fluid workforce. That's what we need to solve for. But because we're humans, and I'm probably guilty of this as much as the next person, we want to hang on to what we know works. And we don't want to reinvent. And it's hard because we're not sure we can win in that new method and with that new framework. Like I want to keep my best employees as long as possible. But if you really push leaders today and say, do you really think in 5 years people are going to stay longer? Nope. Do you think they're going to continue to leave faster? Yep. Okay. So do you see, if you keep trying to reward all your HR team for long-term retention and, very low turnover, you're just going to disappoint yourself, right? Now, so you can't stop it. So the first thing is, how do we mitigate that? That's called defense. Offense is, how do we thrive in that actually? So what I'm doing right now is helping organizations look at industries that actually not only thrive, but profit on a high fluid world of work. And so that's what I try to do is say, look, we have examples. This isn't new. And you can do it. Now it's not going to work in, let's say, a hospital. You don't want a lot of fluidity there. But hospitals, most healthcare systems are in crisis mode right now because many of the healthcare workers were caught in that point of friction of the, debate between masking and anti-masking and vaccination, anti-vaccination, and they took the brunt of both sides of frustration unfairly, extra hours, not paid more, frustrated, burnt out, and they're retiring at levels the industry's never seen before. So, I'm spending a significant amount of my time consulting with health authorities around the world right now to try to reimagine a future where they can thrive, because failure is not an option.
Not in that. And that's tough, actually, Steve. I had no idea you were doing that. And that is really, really tough. And there's a quote that really stands out to me that I think one of your colleagues, Marianne, said when, she was talking about the fact that, the war for talent is over. Talent won.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes. Let's repeat that one. The war for talent's over. Talent won.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so true. It is true. But I'm rethinking that quote now in terms of, because that makes it frames it in a I win, you lose context. And we need organizations to thrive. We need for society to win. Like we need organizations to provide value and services for us. And so, I'm trying to help these organizations, because in technology, listen, and Marianne, anyone who does HR here in Silicon Valley will tell you, we've been fighting battles for talent for decades. The rest of the world now is going to face what we've been facing. I mean, when I've got to build a company next door to Google who can double the salary of my employees in a heartbeat, I got to learn what is my X factor, what is my differentiator. And I've also got to get comfortable that if someone really values that, they're going to go. So I really need to know what motivates you. And if that's what it is, what you do doesn't matter, but I want to make more money. Okay, then you should go over there,
Exactly.
And those kinds of things are just really uncomfortable. Industries that are really, really hurting right now, hospitality, restaurants, retail, hotels. A few months ago, I went to Atlanta for a conference, and I was so excited. I'm going to go to a conference and see people. And as an extrovert, I was like a caged animal, right, during the pandemic. And so my wife, who mostly travels with me when we go to conferences, we arrive at the hotel 1 a.m. Now, that's East Coast time. For us, it was 10 o'clock at night, so we were fine. And the hotel that I had a confirmation reservation code for says to me, sorry, we don't have a room for you. I said, but I've got this code right here. It says I've got a confirmed reservation. And, I'm a gold, elite, platinum, blah, blah member in this hotel. I said, sorry, we actually have a room. We don't have the staff to clean it, so we can't give it to you.
Wow.
And I thought, whoa. So it suddenly turned from frustration to sort of a fascinating moment. Like, wow, really? So Mr. Cadigan, we found a hotel for you around the corner where they have capacity, and we'll walk you over to the hotel. And I thought, man, I felt for them, and I was ready to say, listen, don't worry about me. I'll clean the room.
I'll do my own bed.
Yeah. Don't need any towel service. No problem. I'm only going to be here at night anyway, so it's not a big deal. But that was a moment, and that's hard. That's really hard for lots of people. And I think this gets me to something I said a minute ago, which is I feel we're at a moment where we really have to challenge our own nature of comfort and continuity. And what I'm trying to help leaders get comfortable with is the reality that we have really a lot of broken models of work, Sam, right now. I mean, we built some of these models for a slower pace, a more predictable future work where things didn't change as fast. And now these production cycles, thanks to technology, which we want to be more effective and efficient, and these technologies are bringing down the cycle time so fast, but we've not changed how we think about work and job families and careers and career paths and promotion cycles and performance review cycles. We've not changed any of that. It's still built for a longer, slower period of change. And that's why in my book, I talk about this, like why everyone's frustrated, because all these tools and systems and processes we're employing weren't built for the radical change that we have right now. And so that's really frustrating, and I say it, we've got this cognitive dissonance because as leaders, we were told and we were all trained to build for stability, continuity, consistency. That is strength. And that's what the shareholders want. That's what the board wants. Those are the governing, votes in an organization. Well, today, I think your survival is kind of not based on how consistent you are. It's how well you can deal with instability and unpredictability. So you have to build to expect that. And that's a different profile. That's why I say the future of work is about learning, because now you need people who can adapt and adjust. And this is, I'm going to throw the mic down in a second. I feel like in the next few years, probably it'll start in technology and then it'll spread to more companies who inevitably are going to have competitive advantage through technology. In the future, in the next 5 years, we're going to hire people more based on what they can learn than what they know, because we know their job's going to change. We know the work. And if you've been recruiting, Sam, how long does the job description actually have validity and literal value?
Right. It's so true.
A few weeks, a month. And so, but we've been hiring for experience. We've been not hiring for talent. And now we got to learn how to measure learning speed. And that is the competitive advantage, I think. And again, it's not comfortable. I need to know someone could do it. Otherwise, I don't want to hire them. But you just told me the job's going to change massively in the next year. So what are you really hiring for? And this is where the people start saying, why did you get invited into the conversation, Steve? I'm really uncomfortable. When is happy hour? Because I'm going to need a drink,
Followed by, you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
But it's true, isn't it? And one of the things I was saying in a conversation earlier on today is there was a report out in the last 2-3 weeks that was saying that 65% of line managers' roles will be done by a machine by 2025. But conversely, if you look at one of the stats in your book, and I'm just going to refresh myself, it says there are going to be 133 million additional jobs created by 2025. There's a balance to this, right? And and when I talk about that stat, I'm not saying it in terms of the line managers from a point of fear. It's actually curiosity. You and I have pivoted and grown our businesses. We are marketing ourselves. We are connecting. We are we are building our futures on our terms. It is harder. I get that with a larger organization, but surely, simple statement coming out, if we can scale that and work out what that journey is, we're all looking for the answer, right? But my point is, there is a balance to where we're going in terms of opportunity versus challenge. Are the two separate, or are they actually hand in hand?
Mm-hmm. I think you're hitting on something that's really powerful right now. If I look at when you're in crisis, you want to solve something quickly. And what I see most organizations doing is trying to hire and buy their way through this. Meaning bid up salaries, bid up bonuses, bid up compensation. We're seeing a lot of irrational, and I would argue in many cases, irresponsible knee jerk. Why? Because they're playing the short game. The short game is, I want to buy my way in because failure is not an option. The long game is, I need to learn how to build that talent. And I need to become a learning organization, because I'm never going to win I'm telling you, I was at LinkedIn, and one day we finally said, we're the recruiting company and we're getting slaughtered in the marketplace for experienced talent. We're going to have to get into grow the talent, and we can win on campus. And I'm telling you, if you start, and if you're, you have to be a modest size to be able to really go full scale into the growing the talent. I mean, I would say 1,000 person plus ish organization. We went from no interns to 50 to 200 to 80% of our incremental growth was through interns.
Wow.
That's a shift. It's a leadership shift. It's a cultural shift. It's an exciting shift, because the youth brings energy and excitement and exuberance. And that's what it's all about when you're building something, energy. And so, when I look at organizations that are just like, we're going to, signing bonus and paying bigger salaries. Okay, that's good now. But long-term, you're not solving your problem. Long-term, those people are going to leave if you're not investing in them and growing them. And so I'm sorry, but that's the way that it's going to be resolved longer term, right? It has to be. It has to be. You have to become. And one of my friends really said it. I can't take credit for this, and I can't remember who said it, but they said, "Do you know the new name for a company in the future?" And I said, "No." He said, "Business school." And I go, "Whoa, that captures it, right? It really, really captures it."
I agree with you, and I love the piece about it's more about aptitude and attitude. And when I look at, say, some of my team I've recruited, they are a completely different generation. I have no idea half the time what they're saying to me, but that's okay, because they're teaching me things. I want them to challenge me. I want them to say, hey, that's a little bit pale and stale and a bit middle-aged there, love. We're going to do it that way. And I'm like, brilliant. I'd never thought about that. So that coming together, that raw talent needs to be embraced. And I'm hesitant about using the word channeled, because we would channel it in an old way now, right? And I'm not talking about our age. I'm talking about a period, a time in which we came up through the ranks, in which we learned our trade. There are different ways now that we do things. And I think that's part of the opportunity that certainly I'm excited about.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I think there's a great way for us to help leaders think about this. So I experienced during the pandemic the uncomfortable, unfortunate circumstance of trying to train my 85-year-old parents on how to use Zoom. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was so frustrating for them. And you realize how non-intuitive. All due respect to Zoom, it's a phenomenal product. Yeah. Congratulations, they built something great, and it works. And it's we're talking on it right now.
Exactly.
Listen, when you're with an 85-year-old and you say, go to the lower left corner, there's a picture of a camera that's got a red line through it. Click on that. They said, no, there's not. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the lower left. And then you say, oh, you're still in the Zoom browser window. You're not in the Zoom app window. And it's like, what do you mean the app window? And then it just spirals from there, right? And I've seen comedians really do a great job. There's Saturday Night Live did a great skit about Alexa and all the craziness with that. But here's the thing. My kids, I have a bunch of teenagers. They expect the technology is broken. They expect flaws. They're not expecting it to be fully baked and ready to go. My parents are like, why is this even something we're using? It's not clear. It's not crisp. It's not simple to use. Why? And so I think that will serve our kids well and the next generation. Yeah. Their expectations are, maybe plug it in, unplug it, turn it on, turn it off, things, and then it works, and that's not how many of us, have really been brought to the table. And so I agree with you on that. The second thing I will say is I love to ask executives who are so hell-bent, like, people need to stay here a long time. This is loyalty is important. And, I like to ask them, said, let me ask you a question. When have you had the most energy in your career journey? Doing the same thing for 3 to 5 years, or taking on something new, different, scary, intimidating? They would say, oh, the latter. I said, okay, so why have you designed all your job structure to smother and suffocate and keep people still? You've not structured it for movement. And that's why I say, and if you're ready for your head to start really spinning on a stick, Mrs. or Mr. Executive, the most innovative region in the world that has more unicorns, intellectual property, highly valued companies, is also the region of the world that has the highest turnover. That's Silicon Valley. And those two are connected. In fact, they're probably complementary. In a high fluid world of work, networks are stronger, ideas are exchanged faster and iterated upon and grown. And that's a beautiful thing. It's not beautiful if you're not used to it, and it's not how you build all your models. But it's not a surprise that the most highly, successful on many fronts, and it's not the perfect part of the world, by the way. There are many flaws with Silicon Valley, so I'm not here to sell it as nirvana. But that's not accidental that in a place where people are moving, that there's an enormous amount of innovation and creativity, and where networks are really strong. A lot of people know.
Yes.
I came to Silicon Valley from the insurance industry, and people in that company where I was working, Allianz Insurance, were going to work there till they retired or died. And they loved it. And it was great. And so my network was there. It was confined. When I moved to Silicon Valley, within a year or two, half of the people I worked with were sitting at another company, having me over for lunch, sharing ideas. Hey, what's going on? And in HR, we're like, hey, we're trying this new referral program. How did you guys do it over there at whatever the cool new company was that they were working for? And that made me better because my network was bigger, and we were sharing ideas. And, I tell that a lot to graduates today. When you're measuring who to go work for, going to a place where people are moving in and out is not a bad thing. It can really benefit you,
Really. And you expedited your network, the growth of your network. And I am overjoyed to see organizations now actively encouraging not only their candidates, if they've got them in the pipeline and they're looking to work with them, but their staff to proactively network, not just for their organization and their current role, but to give them value as an individual that will benefit them. Because as you so rightly say in your book, more and more companies are looking at this, spin out, spin in, spin out, spin in. And long may that kind of relationship continue, where you actually build the relationship with the individual for the greater good of that individual and the organization, that there's mutual benefit there, right?
There really is. There really is. It really is interesting to me when I think about, let's think about Sky or other organizations you've been a part of and organizations I've been a part of. At some point in every company I work for, someone comes forward and says, hey, we need to have a mentor program here. And we need to, get coaching and pair our employees with mentors. But rare is the company that says, and those mentors can be outside of the company. Most of the time, oh no, got to be in. Why? Why did all the ideas have to sit in there? And today, I think what's pushing the edge is we have all these new companies whose value is created not by the employees. Airbnb's value is somebody else's home. Uber's value is an experience delivered by a non-Uber employee. That's really interesting, right? I met a head of HR for Uber years ago, and I said, so how do you think about your culture to consumers when everyone's experiencing your company through someone that doesn't work for you? You're paying them. They're not an employee. That's just interesting to me. And, you know, in our kids now, and many people are tasting and experimenting with this, can create value and can build a portfolio of opportunity for themselves and income, not ever working for somebody, through a whole patchwork of, you know, gig work or platforms that they can use to make videos, make music, and sell it. And now NFTs is a thing. I mean, we're seeing teenage kids selling art, making money with NFTs right now. That's super interesting. And think about this: like, my kids came to me one time, and they're like, "Dad, you know, we want to be YouTubers." I'm like, "YouTubers, really? That's the child that I've raised. You want to just like make videos?" They're like, "Yeah." And I thought about it, and it sunk in with me. And I talk a little bit about it in the book. For a child to aspire to be a YouTuber, they have to learn something really, really profound, which is kind of a micro MBA. If I create something that other people think is valuable, I become valuable. Isn't that the greatest career advice you could ever give? Create something that others value, then you become valuable. Yes, that's great. And then they're like, "Dad, you only have like 69 followers on YouTube. You're a loser." I'm like, "Well, thanks, guys. But check out my TikTok. I've got like 1 million likes, so it's really blowing up." But that is kind of where we're at. And it also, you know, all this newness, you know, we started this conversation thread around, you know, people thinking differently about opportunity and leaders thinking differently about talent strategies. I think the hard part is all this new opportunity is another reason why I think the workforce is freaking out, which is a very technical HR term. I think they don't know what to do with all this new choice.
Yeah.
They're worried they're going to make the wrong choice. You know, maybe, and that's why we're seeing lots of high turnover. I was in a company last week in Canada, and it was all the partners, it's a consulting firm, and all the partners in the talent business were all together. And one of the talent partners says, who is relatively young, says, "You know what my friends do? They're constantly applying for other jobs to see if their market value has shifted."
Interesting.
And my first reaction was, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
My second older, you know, HR brain was like, "Oh, disloyal people." And then my third reaction was, how would I face that reality? Which is the same, and it's the same answer that I had when I was building LinkedIn. I've got to build a place where you want to be. And that's the only way that I insulate myself from this candy store of opportunity. I've got to grow you, invest in you, make you feel like you're going to be better in your future, whether you stay here or leave, than any of the other choices you have, because you have more choices than ever before. And that's the world we're in right now. It's really, really so different on so many levels. And then I saw a podcast the other day, which I need to go listen to for the third time, around trust. And some of the research that's coming out on trust is saying, generally, people trust companies more than anything else today, more than social media, more than governments.
Well,
and I said,
I can believe that.
And I said, so there's our opportunity. You know, and all the research on trust by all the good universities in the world suggests it's the most important ingredient for high performance. The more trust and psychological safety, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's a starting point. The other thing I like to tell people is, you know, in this messy world of high turnover and growing disengagement and skills changing and robots and all this stuff, companies have never been more profitable.
Isn't it true? And this is huge. And I love what you just said about the trust piece. It's something that indirectly we talk about with some of our clients who are growing, particularly those where the whole workforce is 100% remote. Mm-hmm. That trust, it doesn't matter from the top down, bottom down, that needs to be earned by every single member of staff. So, for example, when I hear some CEO say, okay, we want to put this kind of monitoring in, I get it. But let them know you're doing it and explain you're doing it. So it's a financial thing. We just want to track where we best place our bets in terms of sales and marketing next year. This isn't about you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Small things like that can now cause real issues. And communication. I was talking earlier that previously how we communicated, we would talk before brain engaged mouth, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. Now we need to really understand how to communicate and ensure that those around us also know how to ask the right questions and when.
Sam, you're talking about, I think, the most important conversation we should be having, which is building the capacity to talk about hard stuff.
Yeah.
I faced something that was really hard for me during the pandemic, which was I was asked to speak about diversity. And I'm thinking, you do see that I'm a male, a white male, a white heterosexual male. I'm not sure I've got a story that merits anyone listening. And my older sister, who's an ordained minister, really challenged me. She said, no, because you need to speak to people like you about this. So I really thought about this whole notion of diversity. And I said, well, what's really, really checking in and talking. I spoke to several women that I know who speak a lot about this. And I said, here's, what do you think I could add? What's a perspective that you think is missing in the discussion? And where I landed was we are not building the capacity to talk about hard stuff. We're moving fast, making quick decisions, sending texts and emails. We're not engaging in unstructured. We're not teaching people to listen and talk about hard things. When I look at Black Lives Matter, when I look at the political polarization in the world, and you faced a lot of that in the UK, we faced a lot of it here, and a lot of the, France has been facing it. Like difference of opinion, conversations about diversity. This is a hard conversation. Mm-hmm. We need to learn how to do that. And I put an endorsement for a conversation on LinkedIn thread yesterday, which was something around this. A friend of mine in Israel, Shahar Rez, who sold his company to Fiverr. He's a wonderful mind. He says, great leaders build environments where people can question what they're doing and challenge you. And I've worked in companies where we all know that, everyone says, oh yeah, open and honest communication. Not really. Yeah. Do not challenge or you will be out. And so I don't think in this world that can continue. And so I'm excited about the greater transparency we're seeing, but you said something which I really, really believe in. And it is, we need to have more conversations. We need to sponsor them. We need to invite them. We need to bring the elephants in the room and really help our people. And that's the thing I worry about with my kids. And here's the signal that got me worried. I was calling my kids a few weeks ago and they texted me, what do you want? I said, I want you to pick up the phone so I can talk to you. I don't want to text back saying, what do you want? And I'm thinking those kids, and they, and looking and studying this, they want to control the narrative. If I text you, I can edit and frame how I want to say it. And then my mother calls me and I text her, is everything okay? What do you want? I was doing it. And so I think we've got to be, intentional. And I know it sounds probably cliche and someone's probably rolling their eyes listening to this, but you fix the capacity, you grow the capacity to talk about hard stuff. Now everything gets elevated. Your things about your competitive landscape or where the product really is in its evolution or where you really are with your, eliminating bias agenda. Like all these things become more, achievable for you to move in the right way when you can have the harder conversations. So I don't know anyone that's really doubling down on this, but I love where you're going with this, Sam. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've read quite a bit about this from other sources. Sarah Noel Wilson has written a great piece around this in her book, where she talks about the fact that when she knows when she hits a nerve, and she can read the room, and people will slide up to her and say, that point there. And she makes a really wonderful point, which is, when you talk about the big problems and the big challenges, whatever they may be, you don't always start that conversation to fix it. The first point is understanding it before you can then move on to fix it. And that to me was really profound.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're getting into curiosity and growth mindset and really learning, which we both know that that's really, really powerful. And it's not something that we find many recruiters and hiring managers are really thoughtfully pursuing. People that bring that in, it's just more, I know that you can get this done because you've proven that you can get it done. Yeah, but our business is changing. Can they get it done in a different way? If we change the ingredients or the recipe for our product, we don't know. Okay. We're going to want to know. We're really going to want to know. But yeah, we're such a dynamic time. So, I mean, I love having these conversations, Sam. I mean, there's so much more that we could talk on about this, and maybe we can, continue the conversation in different forums. But I would just ask the audience, to look at this moment as an opportunity. Really, it's a great opportunity. Let's tackle all the big stuff that was hard to do in a world where things didn't change as easily. Right now, everything's up for grabs. So
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I would say to everyone, you know how much I love it. I've got your book. You can see it's all got the little bits there.
All those tabs. Yeah, that's great.
For anyone who hasn't read it, please take the opportunity to do so. It's thought-provoking. I've read it several times. It's with me. I send it to my clients. I want people to really understand some of Steve's perspective and the research that he's put into this, to get other people's point of views and facts to help you think about and create your own future of work. Steve, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an utter delight. And as ever, I could talk to you for hours about this, and very much looking forward to carrying that conversation on face-to-face one day, who knows where in the world.
Oh, you're so kind, Sam. Thank you for having me and for having such a fun conversation. Anytime, I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve.
Take care.